Good evening and welcome to the Regional Agreement Amendment Committee meeting of November 13th, 2017. Thank you all for coming. It's appreciated. I made it as aware that I could to the public at every single meeting that I've been to or been at, trying to get people to come and participate, and you can see what we have. So would you please join me in a pledge of allegiance to the flag? Before we do that, I'd like to remind everyone this meeting is being recorded. This at a later date. Thank you. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, thank you all for coming. We need to approve the minutes of September 12th, 2017. We're going to make sort of an amendment to those minutes, though.
Okay. Do you want a motion first?
Please.
Motion to approve the minutes of September 25th, 2017.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion. I think the amendment is to read, Fred and I had discussed it, we're not co-chairing the meetings. I'm going to chair it, you're going to be the vice chair.
That's fine.
Does everybody agree with that?
Yep. Do you need a motion to that effect? Or?
I thought that was the original intent.
It was, but it says chair and chair, it says co-chairs.
Okay.
So just to clean it up, for the sake of what Mac's talking about, we're going to straighten that out.
So motion to amend the minutes as stated to read chair and vice chair.
Yes.
Second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now we need to vote to approve the minutes as amended.
Motion to approve the minutes of September 25th, 2017 as amended.
I will second that.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. Keep in mind, just for everybody's own thing, the meeting law minutes have changed as of October 6th of this year, and you do not have to be present at a meeting to vote the minutes of the meeting.
Really?
You are voting the document only.
Wow.
Okay. Agreements to date. We're going to let Mac take over in about 2 seconds. I just want to remind everyone we have agreed to keep these meetings to an hour and 30 minutes. And I'm going to try to abide by that. It is 6 o'clock. We'll be done at 7:30. That way everybody can get home and get done what they have to do and move forward. So we have a quorum. You gentlemen are up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both for coming. I know it's a miserable rainy night, and the last time we didn't have a meeting, so anybody watching might be able to see the reason we didn't have a meeting is we had no power. We had that freak storm that took down trees, and so that's why we didn't meet, if anybody's wondering why we didn't meet on that beautiful evening. So.
Coming in the rain is slightly better than coming in the dark. So, you received a while ago in the packet a document with your agreement with some amendments. And our plan tonight is to start going through it paragraph by paragraph, asking you if you're okay with either what's there or the amended language that we have proposed. Again, this language is based on us doing this 8 or 9 times with other districts and having Department of Education push back on us and say, well, you need to say this or you don't need to say this or whatever. That doesn't mean it's perfect, and it doesn't mean that you don't have opportunity to have it say what you want it to say. So we're just using our best our best experience to give you some new information. Just one housekeeping thing. For some reason, the Department of Education likes us to use shorter versions. So throughout the document, eventually we'll change whenever it says school committee, it will just say committee. Anytime it says regional school district, it will just say district. Anytime it says Mass General Laws, it will just say MGL. And when it says Code of Mass Regulations, it will just say CMR. So for some reason, they like to have to keep that more succinct. So our plan is, if it's okay with you, is to go through each section and we'll explain what any changes that we've made and ask you to discuss anything you want about that paragraph. Yes.
Mac, just for clarity, like those 4 things that you just said,
Right.
shall we vote them and get it over with, and as we move through this document, it might speed up the process if we do it on every one? Or did you have a different plan?
Sure.
I'm just trying to keep it so it's moving.
Yeah, I think if you want to take each paragraph and vote, the other thing that I would mention, that all the other times we've done this, even though people voted on individual paragraphs, sometimes you might not like one as well as other people might like it, but at the end, you'll have another opportunity to look at the whole thing, and once you see everything in context, it may change your mind. So even though you vote on these things individually, our recommendation is that you vote on the whole thing at the end to make sure that you're okay with it.
And keep in mind, everyone that's on the committee, this has to go
State.
to the DESE, to the boards of selectmen, and eventually to town meeting for vote. So there's going to be a lot of give and take here in the voting process of how we're going to do this.
Yeah, and just make sure that the school committee, your committee is going to vote on something to recommend it to the school committee. The school committee will take a vote on it, and whatever they decide, that's what goes to the town. Now, it goes to the selectmen. The selectmen do not have to vote on the language. They just have to agree to put it on the town warrant, town meeting warrant. And then your towns are going to vote on it, and then the commissioner at the end will have to sign off. So that's the process.
Thank you.
So, yes, so those 4 things, Mass General laws to MGL, regional school district to district, school committee to committee, and code of mass regulations to CMR.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the abbreviations as stated.
Second.
Discussions? Chris?
So just real quick, so are we just going to place those in the document, or are you actually going to do a little definition section? How do you want to, you're literally just going to place it in the document, or are you contemplating that we're going to have a definition section that kind of spells things out as well?
If you look at the very first paragraph, it says, the agreement entered into pursuant to Chapter 71 of the General Laws of Massachusetts, and after that it says, here and after referred to as MGL. Each time, the first time that any of those things come up, it'll be spelled out there.
So I'm just leveraging your knowledge. So it's really just those 4. We don't anticipate we're going to have a laundry list where we can have like a definitions page. Okay.
That should do it.
That should do it.
Great.
Anyone else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Unanimous.
Okay, so what we have done here is anything that we think can or should be crossed out, it's in blue ink with a line through it. Any language that we have inserted is in red. All your current language is in black, either in black or blue that's been crossed out. So we have taken nothing out of here, of your current agreement. So as we go along, we will update this, and the next time that we meet, you'll see any of the changes that you agreed to tonight will be reflected in the document the next time, and we'll be able to keep building on that as we go along. So the first in the capital letters there, we just crossed out the expansion of, because that has already happened. You're already a pre-K to 12 region, so we don't need to say the expansion of the district. In the second paragraph, obviously there'll just be a new date whenever this comes to pass, and we added here and after referred to as MGL. So, any other comments about that first paragraph? Maybe, Bob, we could do a section at a time.
Yep,
So
I'm good with
that's-
that.
this-
Everybody else is?
This is kind of one section as itself, and then we'll get into section 1. So maybe a vote on that much so far?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the first 2 paragraphs of the amended agreement
I'll second that.
as read.
Yep.
Someone second it?
Second.
Discussion?
Simple enough.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Self-explanatory.
Okay, good. Well, we'll see if we can go through all of section 1, but we'll take it a paragraph at a time. So A is the powers and duties and composition. In 1, you will see that we have added a line, the permanent committee shall consist of 10 members, which is what yours says. Based on the population of the member towns at the time of amending this regional agreement, 6 members will be from Whitman and 4 members will be from Hanson. So that's not a change in concept, it's just clarifying that. But it does allow, it sets up the concept that it could change over time. We'd still have 10 school committee members, but there could be some change in that.
By inserting based on the population.
Right, right.
Thank you.
Population, school enrollment, isn't it?
No, it's the
No,
town
population.
population. Yeah,
Really, not school enrollment?
right. That's what the law says. It's
Okay.
based on your town's population. Any questions about that? Okay, B. This just, I believe, spells out what your current practice, but it just spells it out a little more definitively than your current regional agreement. I'll give you a minute to read that.
Mac, for the purposes of who may be watching, I hate to have to do it, but could we read it out loud? If you want me to do it, I will. It's fine.
I'd be happy to do that. So B says, and these are new wording in this proposed wording in the regional agreement. Each member must reside in the town which she or he represents. Each member must be elected consistent with the process for the election of town officials in said town and will be elected to open seats during the annual elections in said town. Each member will serve a 3-year term, with the terms staggered so that at least one member representing each member town will be elected each year. The term of each elected member will begin on the first business day after his or her election and after being sworn in by the respective town clerk. A member who has not otherwise vacated his or her seat will continue to serve until his or her successor is elected and sworn. Any questions about that?
I have a question on it. Say a member of the Whitman School Committee on a 3-year term is only into it for a year and a half, and election's on for another 6 to 8 months. Is there a way that the boards of selectmen and this sitting Whitman elected school committee can appoint somebody until the next round of elections?
It's further along.
There you go, you read my
Further
mind.
along, Dean.
Right.
We've done it.
That's right.
Yeah, that's why I'm going there, 'cause I didn't say, okay.
We've made a couple of adjustments since we sent this to you. So this one, hopefully you can follow along. It'll be more clear next week next time we meet. So C should say, each member of the committee shall have 1 vote, and each vote shall be of equal weight, period. And then I'm going to cross off the rest of those 4 lines and continue with what is listed in your list as D below. So D will all come up under C. And we'll continue to say, the committee will review the makeup of the committee every 10th year following publication of the decennial federal census, and every 5 years in between based on official state census figures. The committee will adjust the representation, if necessary, to reflect the relative town populations as near as practical, but within a 10% range as required by the 1 person, 1 vote principle. So for example, if for some reason the population shifts and it's 50-50 instead of 60-40, then this, without having to redo this regional agreement, it would still be your same 10 members, but there would be 5 equal votes from each of the 2 towns instead of 6 and 4. If it became something more unique than that, you could go to weighted votes. For example, a lot of systems have done that, especially if you wanted to keep 4 members from the smaller town, for example. Let's say that your smaller town got even smaller, and it should be 80-20 as an example. But you wanted to have still 4 representatives from that town that has should only have 2. you could still have 4 representatives, but you would have to give them a less weight. Or maybe the bigger town, they get 1.2 votes, and the smaller town gets only 1 vote or a 0.8 vote or something like that.
It's like Plymouth County.
But this gives you some flexibility so that you don't have to redo the regional agreement if that changes.
Fred?
Yes, Fred.
The one thing I don't see here is, and let's say you get to a point where the population shifts, how is it determined who goes? Let's say you're going by the one
Oh,
vote,
yeah.
and you're keeping it at, 6-4. Hanson's population diminishes, and now it's going to be 7-3. How do you decide who that 4th person is?
Person up for
Hanson
election?
that loses the seat.
You would, go ahead. I have that answer, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You would do that at the next election after the person's term ran out.
Okay, so I would assume it would be done at the time of town election anyways,
Right.
so.
So it was the person that would be up that, you have to be up that year after we run, that position would be eliminated?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's what we're doing with the Board of Health, I mean, the Planning Board in Whitman.
Though if it swung by 2 in a 3-year term, right, then you wouldn't necessarily have 2 seats
That's-
up, right?
right.
So,
You might only
there's
have one
really
up.
no language
Yeah.
to discuss how that would happen.
Unless we do it
Well-
one year and one the next year.
Well, it would be 1 person, 1 vote, and under 1 person, 1 vote, if you read that, it states, what would happen, say you had 2 seats up, and 3 people would be now running for 1 seat.
But if you only had 1 seat up, if you only had 1 term expiring, and you needed to get rid of 2, how do you make the decision? Is it the next one in line that?
That I don't know.
Actually, as I got thinking about this, that isn't an issue. Your agreement says you're going to have 10 school committee members. That's not going to change. If it gets to, the proportion gets off, you're going to have to weight the votes or redo the regional agreement.
Right.
You could-
Okay, so it's gonna stay at 10 no matter what.
Right.
And now it's just gonna be what
So you would go to-
what weight does a vote carry?
Right.
Or you would go to 5 and 5 in that first year and wait the vote.
You can't, you have to keep it
At 10.
at 10 committee
Right,
members.
but you could move.
Well, you could move one over to the other town, too.
Right.
As I think we might have mentioned, there are 5 ways that you can elect school committee members. And we have some copies here if you'd like to take those at some point, but obviously you don't have to do that at this point. But so this will allow you to do that. And the other thing I should just mention here that you don't have to do, you have to do it every 10 years based on the federal census. Most committees choose to look at it every 5 years, and based on the 5 years in between those federal census, and based it on the state census that they've done for your community. So I guess I should ask you if that's what you'd like to do, to look at it every 5 years or wait for 10 years to decide if it's out of balance.
Do we really think it's going to change that quick?
I don't see any giant changes in either one of these towns.
Right.
No, but the other thing, too, is should we include an example in there? And I'm assuming that you're saying the higher, lower average. So if Whitman dipped below 55%, now you might be talking 5 and 5. Or, vice versa, if it ended up over 65%. Now it's already carried over to the next level, so to speak. Should we include an example in that language, just to keep it crystal clear?
I see several heads going in different directions. So it's-
I get nervous about putting numbers in
Yeah.
the document.
Yeah.
Me too.
If you're gonna,
Chris?
so if you're gonna do examples, I think it's gonna, I'd just be concerned it's gonna snowball into lots of examples. So I think we should just, so I think I like where you're going, so we should just clarify the language. So rounded to the, we'll just use regular rounding rules, right? So rounded to the nearest,
Well, the state
says-
says we have to do it to the nearest 10.
there you go.
It says
So we're covered, right? Nearest tenth is nearest tenth.
Pretty much spelled out.
45, 54.9, nearest tenth is 50, right?
Right.
But I think the how and the when, going back to where we were just in the conversation, I don't know, I feel like we should spend some time and maybe try and spell that out a little bit, how the committee and how we would decide who's off and who's on and when.
Again, nobody's going off the committee.
You have
Just
10
might
members.
have a different amount of vote.
Well,
There won't be any change. You're still gonna have 10 school committee members. And
Right, but one
With
person
the
from
front-
Hanson could leave and you could add a
what
spot,
I'm
right,
saying.
in Whitman or vice
Right.
versa.
Right, isn't that how it would
I have
work?
3 years left in my term, and
I don't think that's the intent. You could write it that way. The intent
No.
is to still keep,
everyone for their term?
Actually, it says 6 members from Whitman and 4 members from Hanson, so the membership would stay the same. It would be the weight of the vote that would change.
right,
Right, so one person's vote from Hanson might be only counted as half.
right.
Correct.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Percentage.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
guess-
Nobody's going off or coming on.
I guess then I would just say, I don't love the word representation, right? So if you're not really adjusting the representation, you're adjusting how we count the vote.
The voting,
Well, it's
The
based
power
on
of the-
representation of your town
It's the
population.
power of the representation.
Yeah, I personally, I think of elected officials. If you're using that term representation, I automatically say, we're gonna shift the membership
One
from
person, one vote.
6-4 to, 7-3.
that's what I thought you meant, yeah.
My personal opinion would be,
Right.
we should spell out that we're gonna change the weighting of how the membership, we're not changing the membership, but we're gonna change the weighting.
Right, because prior in the document, it says that the membership must be 6 from Whitman, 4 from Hanson. So you can't change that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
So you
it
could
doesn't,
take
it doesn't,
70% and divide it over 6 members and 30% over the 4 members, and that's the weight of each vote
That's how you weigh
from
the vote.
Whitman and Hanson.
because when we discussed that first paragraph, kind of going back, I think what you had said, that leaves it open to change, but now we're saying here, we're not gonna change that, we're gonna change the weighting. And so I guess I'd like either one paragraph to be shored up to say that membership will remain permanent, and then you adjust it over here by changing the weighting, should the populations shift, or you say that membership is,
Well,
open for
what the document says
1A
is that
says.
at the time that we're writing it, that's the representation. It doesn't say that that's going to be the representation forever.
No, it leaves it open.
Right.
it leaves it open, but then we're saying,
No,
if
it-
the population shifts, that's not what we're gonna do, we're gonna leave it permanent.
It doesn't leave it open, it requires you to review it every 5 and 10
Right,
years.
Right.
And if there's a change, you have to
Oh, wait a sec.
change the agreement.
Right, and see, that's what I'm trying to avoid, is changing the agreement.
Right.
That would be, so now we have a population shift, we have to change the agreement, it's gotta go back to school committee, it's gotta go back to
The whole
by the
process.
time it's voted, the population
change
might
again.
shift back the other way.
So we probably could write something that would say that the membership, as long as it stays at 10, the membership could change. I guess we could write it that way if that's what the committee wants.
That's a discussion.
I think I think what you would say is the membership wouldn't change without an adjustment to this agreement, right? You're almost making a recommendation in the next paragraph of what to do if the population changes, and that recommendation is to go to a weighted vote. You don't have to spell it how you would do it, right? You would just say, based on, I don't know, based on state census figures or based on.
It sort of spells it out with the 10% range is required by the one person, one vote principle. You'd have to come up with a clear 10%. If you were in the middle, it doesn't change it. If you're at 8%, it doesn't change it. It's got to be 10 or more in order to change the vote. And if that happens in either town, I'll be shocked. But I understand it needs to be, but it's kind of spells it out. Within the 10% range is required by the one person, one vote law. That kind of spells that out. If you're at 9.6,
Well, it spells out you
we're
have to
not
make a
at 10.
change,
What?
right? It spells out that you have to make a change, but one paragraph, we're saying, based on the population today, it's 6-4. That leads me to say, all right, if I'm reading this agreement, if that population goes to 70-30, then I expect the membership to change.
Right, seven for the
It's not
town for
clear to
7.
me, yeah. you know
For
what I
70
mean?
and 3 for the town for 30.
Right. Or it could go the other way.
Oh,
It would be
right.
5-5.
Yeah, right, exactly right.
Right.
But it wouldn't
It's just
even
not-
go to
it's just not
70, it would
clear
go to
Which way the
65.
document leads you to go.
Right, and then you need wording of how you add and eliminate representatives. If you lose one, it's the one that is up for election, is zeroed out, and that person would have to either challenge somebody if there's 2 up for
And if
election.
there's two up for election, one of the seats is gone, it's 2.
And the 2 can go after that 1 seat, right? And if
And that's if they both decide to run for reelection.
exactly. And then if you have to add one, you just add one for the other town and the person runs for it.
Right.
Yeah, that would it'd be simpler. And it'd be also simpler when you're doing when you're doing voting on issues. I know like at Plymouth County, I'm worth, I think, 1.6, where Brockton's worth, 10 point something or 20 point something. So it's like, takes, 8 Whitmans to make one Brockton, it depends on the population. And they have to sit down and add it all up to see how the vote goes. This way, one person, one vote. It's so simple.
As we're thinking about this is a little bit unusual, but I don't think that number 1 does say specifically it has to stay at 10.
It doesn't.
10 votes.
It doesn't. I reread.
So I think that was the intent of this, but it doesn't have to say that. So I guess one of the questions that you need to answer
This is just the
is,
first paragraph.
Or
a lot of communities, the smaller community always wants to feel like that they have voices at the table, even if they don't have the same votes. So the question that we can write whatever you want, but if the population ever went to 80-20, would the smaller town be okay with having only 2 school committee members there and have 1 full vote, or would they rather have 4 people at the table, each with a half a vote, so that they have a voice, more voices there? So
That's an interesting thought.
I think you'd weight the vote, like we talked about, so you'd have at least 4 people from one and 6 from the other.
Yeah, I guess all we're saying, right, is neither of these paragraphs spells out what to do. It leaves it open to do it either way. And
Well,
do
we-
we want to?
We could add,
Interesting.
the process of the vote would be weighted.
we could say if the town populations become more disparate than 10% difference, the votes would be weighted. I mean, that would lock you into a process, a system. If that's what you want to do, we can do that, obviously.
Discussion?
I mean, it's the same net result. I mean, let's face it, over the past 20-something years, the population's always stayed within this realm anyways. I don't really
I
see
always
it
thought it would
changing,
change. I always thought Hanson would grow.
you know? I mean, we've been growing, Whitman,
Yeah, I thought it would be the
you
opposite.
know? So, I mean, even if Hanson starts to grow and Whitman diminishes, I mean, you're looking at a 4% swing right now. But you're talking population. That's the number I
it's
don't
not
have off the top of my head.
Population.
Hanson's is 41.3% right now, and Whitman's is 58.7.
Based upon enrollment.
No,
No,
based on the
based
population.
on-
I always thought it was enrollment.
Just went
Well,
online.
that's the funding.
Based on the
Okay.
2010.
That's the fund.
Oh, okay, so,
It's really not too far off.
2010
So-
census gives you 24,698 people, and it's a 41.3% are Hanson and 58.7 are Whitman.
They round up.
As
so
of
it's pretty
2010.
close to the
Pretty close to
the
it.
To the
enrollment
student
figure.
enrollment, it is.
Very
Yeah.
close.
It's almost,
Yeah.
You need a huge swing.
You'd have to have a giant change.
I'm not having any more kids.
I mean, I think if you had that big of a change, you're probably amending this agreement again anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so
For now.
putting in language that says you'd weight the vote pursuant
For
to
the next 20 years.
any shift, I think is fine.
fine.
And then you're locked into weighting it, and then if there's a 2 or 3 person swing, again, you're probably, you're opening this document
20
back
years
up
from now,
anyway.
let's hope that someone remembers that.
Yeah, 1,000 people now, probably gonna need to read.
So we'll draft something that says that if
Okay.
it goes beyond the 10%, you would go to weighted vote so that you keep the same 10 school committee members, right?
Yep.
And then the other question is, what did you just say, Steve?
Well, if they go with the every 5 years in
Oh.
between, I mean, nothing's going to change in 5 years.
Or you'd at least see it, you'd
Yeah, you have
might
to deal
change
with it.
one at a time,
You have
right?
to-
So
yeah.
you'd have to deal
Yeah,
with
you have to deal with it every 5 years.
Yeah, you'd see it coming.
And then it would give you some time to plan, I guess.
You could see it
So
coming.
is that okay? Do you want to keep the 5 years lookup?
Do we have any history on this, the fluctuation?
Yeah, it hasn't changed.
Not at
Yeah,
all.
all right.
It hasn't
No,
it's been
changed.
60/40.
Yeah, for
all
how
the way
long?
along, since this was
In
started.
existence.
1992.
92?
Yeah,
92.
that was the last document review.
Yeah,
It's not going to change in the
And
next
this
4 years.
document's good for
not
20
in my
years, right?
lifetime.
Yeah, we're okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think we're kind
You're
of beating a
fine.
dead horse.
Okay, we'll draft something, and can look at
Okay.
it next time.
okay.
So when you get ready to vote at the end of this section, we'll keep that aside.
Okay.
So, number 2, there's no change about your quorum, just a majority. Number 3, we crossed out the bottom 4 lines because it's just too specific. Again, as someone said here already, we should make this general enough that will be able to be used for a long time, and you only need to be specific in some specific cases. So all the business about section 16 to 161, that could change in chapter 71, so it's not, we don't think that's necessary. Okay? Number 4, we just deleted, oh, I'm supposed to be reading this,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I forgot. Number 4, it says, at the first regular meeting of the committee, and we're crossing out following the 1992 district election and thereafter at the first regular meeting, because it's not relevant anymore. To be held after each district election, the committee shall organize and choose by ballot. And by the way, that's the only time that the school committee can vote by secret ballot, is the chairperson of the committee. Otherwise, there's no such thing as a secret ballot by the
Right.
school committee. Anyway,
That's what we do.
organize and choose by ballot a chairperson and a vice chairperson from its own membership. At the same meeting or at any other meeting, the committee shall appoint a treasurer and secretary who may be the same person, but who need not be members of the committee. Fix the time and place for its regular meetings and provide for the calling of special district meetings. The chairperson will appoint members to serve on subcommittees annually. Question there?
Should that, when you say committee shall organize, should it be, since we're already organized, should it be reorganized or stay with organized? I don't know if that's not important, but, you know.
Either way, it's all right. Any other?
How did we define district again? Can you say it? Go back. How did we define the word district?
Is your pre-K to 12 regional school district?
Herein referred to as district.
Yeah, so district, it's not the district election.
the
It's
town
not the,
election.
it's a town election, correct? And number 4?
No, no,
District
we're
capital
talking-
D?
Yeah, you could add district town election.
Correct. PK through 12 group is not electing the school committee members, right?
Well, I think that just means, you have a good point there, but it means the election that relates to the district.
School committee.
Yeah. the school
Right.
committee.
So the town but it's the town elections we're talking about, correct?
No.
It's,
School committee members are elected at the first regular meeting. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
The district election within the town.
Be held after each,
District election.
it's the election
No,
for the
after
district.
each town election.
town election.
It's town election.
Just makes it sound easier.
Town
Says
district
town.
election,
It's the
yeah.
it's the election for the district. I think.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
It's not every town election.
Okay, now, I don't know if you need me to read the whole next couple of pages.
No, you don't
That-
need
We
to.
talked about the interim committee.
It's deleting old language.
Number 3, in case we're being sticklers, are you replacing, we have Massachusetts general law, you replacing that with MGL?
Yep. I did that, but I just
Okay.
didn't.
Yeah, in our copy it might be different, I just.
You'll see it next time.
Yeah.
So, we moved all the way down to D, vacancies. And this is the answer to your question about if someone leaves their post in the middle of
Yeah.
their. If a vacancy occurs among the members elected under subsections 1B and 1C, acting jointly, the selectmen and the remaining committee members from the town concerned shall within 30 days appoint a member to serve until the next election, at which time a successor shall be elected to serve for the balance of the unexpired term, if any.
Perfect.
We've only done it once in the
Yeah.
15 years I've been on the committee. It was in here.
Really?
That's exactly how we did it.
Yep.
So how did that work? Just real, I don't want to hold it up. So how would that work?
Okay,
It's
let's
the
say-
selectmen and the committee members.
The selectmen and the committee members
Remaining
remaining
from
from that town only.
Yep.
So let's say we had 5 people that wanted to sit on that seat until the next election was going to come up. The selectmen and the remaining committee members, say it was Hanson, there'd be 3 members remaining, would make that choice.
Got it.
That person would sit there until the next election comes up, and then he or she could run against anyone that might want that seat. But it's that town
So
only.
those 8, in that case, those 8 members would make the election of that replacement.
Well, it'd only be the specific, like I say, it was.
5 selectmen plus 3 school committee members.
Right,
in
for
that-
Hanson,
Got it.
okay? And if it was Whitman, it'd be 5 selectmen and 5 school committee members, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Got it, thank you.
E, under organization,
Why twice? Didn't we just talk about
yes, we did.
organization?
I don't know, I just realized that myself.
See, I like the way this is worded, following the latest town election to be held.
Yes, we have that duplicated.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll correct that next time, obviously.
Different language, too.
Can we try and use that following the latest town election language?
Pardon me?
Can we use that following the latest town election language? That was where I was getting tripped up in the word district.
Second paragraph, the second phrase, use that. Following the latest town election. He just wants to use it.
Yep.
Yep.
What's that dinging noise?
Yeah, what is that
Might be
noise?
the vacuum.
That's the vacuum cleaner, it's jammed in the corner somewhere.
The robot cleaner.
It's way down the corner.
Key, it's live.
I can hear it.
I don't know what it is.
Seems like a male. I like men who vacuum.
There's no language as far as the vice chair in there as well, where there was in the other
So we'll stick with the
paragraph.
other languages, or is, are we good?
We'll put them together to make sure it's inclusive.
Okay,
Okay.
So, if you'd like to take a vote on section 1 with the, leaving out the, where we're going to revise about the 10 school committee members and how that's going to work.
yeah, Fred.
Can we table?
Right, I think
I
we
would
gotta
table
wait and see
Table
what the
that
final,
until
What section?
we see all the language.
Okay?
hate to vote on something that we're not actually reading.
Correct. And waiting for revisions in 2 paragraphs out of, 5.
Really, there's only 2 that we could,
Yeah.
right, number 2 and number 3.
But I mean,
Then we're going to go through it anyway and vote it, and then we'll vote the whole document.
Okay.
So we're good.
Section 2, type of regional school district. Currently, it says the regional school district shall include, and we're recommending crossing out the elementary grades, pre-kindergarten through 8, and senior high school, consisting of grades 9 through 12, because that's already happened. So it
Right.
would read, the regional school district shall include all grades pre-K through 12.
yep,
The committee shall have the right to establish adult evening education courses. The committee is hereby authorized in its discretion to establish and maintain, and I'll go back and read the stricken part. If you look down the red, it should be a small a, all required or authorized, cross out all, educational programs or offerings, but not limited to vocational programs under MGL Chapter 74. So let me go back and read that the way it might read. The regional school district shall include all grades pre-K through 12, period. The committee shall have the right to establish adult evening education courses, period. The committee is hereby authorized in its discretion to establish and maintain all required or authorized educational programs or offerings, including but not limited to vocational programs under MGL Chapter 74. And the part that we're recommending crossing out, so the committee is hereby authorized in its discretion to establish and maintain state-aided vocational education acting as trustees, therefore, in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 74 of the general laws and acts amendatory thereof, in addition thereto, or dependent thereon, and any other special educational classes in accordance with the provisions of the general laws and acts amendatory thereof, in addition thereto, or dependent thereon. That's a mouthful.
We're crossing out.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
I'm a little confused as to what is authorized. Who authorized what in this language?
Committee.
The regional school districts shall include, the committee shall have the right to establish, so it's
Yeah.
the committee.
That did what? Authorized an action and therefore they're,
Yeah. You have the right to establish adult education courses and any other educational programs that are allowed by law. So it's pretty
In
general.
its discretion.
Yeah.
So the authorized programs are those
are
authorized?
those
by law?
authorized by this committee, by the school committee?
No, I think it's all those authorized by Mass General laws, right?
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And a question,
Chapter 74.
yeah, the vocational program
Including
in
but not
chapter
limited
74, is
to
that going to be
chapter
just the
74.
evening classes?
No, no, it could be during your school day.
For-
That's vocational education.
So aren't you stepping on South Shore Votech's toes, doing that? Where we already have a vocational system dealing with Whitman-Hanson?
We have vocational
It would-
I know you have it's culinary arts and things like that, but I mean, you know.
You probably don't have something that's under Chapter 74.
Okay.
But
don't.
It says the law allows you to.
You could.
want to.
Yeah.
And you're stepping on South Shore,
But we used to have a shop program, we used
Oh,
to
yeah,
have those, and they were
right.
part of that, but we don't have them now. But if we were to decide we wanted to do that again.
Well, we're not part of it
committee could do
now,
that.
is when we joined South Shore. That's why
But
we.
even when we were part of South Shore Votech,
Oh, the shop.
we had programs.
Did you?
Yeah, we sure did. We just got rid of those because when we built this high school, it didn't have any
Yeah.
place for them. But if we wanted to, say, do our culinary program as one of those programs, we could.
Okay.
so we're just,
Does that answer your question, Jim?
Yeah. It's an interesting circle.
it's just trying to say that you could do
Whatever you
anything,
want.
whatever the law allows you to do. And under the law. You don't want to start listing all the things you can't do.
Right.
Motion to approve section 2 as read and redacted.
Somebody going to second it?
Yeah, second.
Okay. Discussion?
Are we going to wait till we see the actual changes before we vote on it, or you just?
We're going to vote the whole document, Danny. We're going to go over it again, but so we know what we've done and what we haven't done.
Okay.
Then you're going to see it written, and we'll go over the whole thing and vote it again, and then vote it as a document.
All right, so we're voting, we're voting the changes,
Yes.
the amendments.
The one's right here, it's all amended.
Any other questions?
as amended. So you're voting to approve section 2 as amended, period.
Okay.
As read
Right?
and
Right.
As read.
All those in favor? Okay. Section 3.
Okay, regional school district, there are a couple of questions here. Pupils in grades 9 through 12 shall attend the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District High School located within the district. And it currently says off Franklin Street in the town of Hanson, the present Whitman-Hanson Regional High School. We're asking you if you think it needs to be that specific. Hard to believe with this beautiful school that any time in the next 50 years, this building will move, but so that's up to you whether you want that in there or not. Pupils in pre-kindergarten through 8 shall attend schools located in their towns of residence, and it says now, except pupils in special education classes who shall attend schools as designated by the committee, and 2, pupils enrolled in specialized educational programs. And it already says at the end of your current agreement, on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools and by vote of the committee. So what we are finding in other places is that we don't need to be so specific as saying it's only special education there could be other reasons why you would want a grade. There is something later that says that if a school burned down, for example, the committee could say the kids from one town could go to school in another town.
It's all one region.
There may be other reasons that you would want that, and not have it be so specific. So kids could, the way we have it written here is kids could go to a different town on the recommendation of the superintendent of schools and by vote of the committee, which is already, that part is part of your language now.
So-
I don't think that the vote of the committee should be something necessary, that the superintendent on an individual basis.
I disagree with you because it's about paying taxes. So if you're paying taxes to go to Whitman schools or to Hanson schools, and if we're making an exception, I think the school committee probably does need to support the superintendent in that.
Well, I would think support the superintendent, but the
By a vote?
superintendent should. But how do we do that and bring up a pupil's name in a circumstance?
You don't.
You probably wouldn't, but I'm thinking if a school closed or something like that, and you absolutely had to do that, that would be a circumstance where you'd want the committee to vote on.
Yeah, it would be
Okay,
like,
I'm thinking of more the individual.
Yeah, that's always different. I mean, yeah,
You know,
that's more.
That's how I'm looking at that.
But the other piece is the preschool is going to be here at the high school. So you'd really want to be a little more vague as to where the preschool is located, I would say.
But that's, again, the recommendation of the superintendent.
True,
of the
but I
school
mean-
committee,
Right.
saying that's where we're going to have the preschool, and that's a logical thing. I would assume the committee would support that.
because it may not always be here.
Well, it would also cover ODPs, out-of-district placements, that save the district money in a specific area that we can't handle. The superintendent recommends that we do an ODP, and then the school committee votes it for the support. You know, it's just a double.
Yeah, but is that a placement, or is that because we don't offer a program?
It could be either way.
Right.
Could be truthfully because we don't offer the program, or because it makes more sense to have it out of district.
Generally, that's.
Yeah, but you would eliminate, I guess my point is you would be eliminating the program, right? And then you'd have to send the kids out of district. And to me, that's a little bit different than what the language here is intending, which is,
But Chris-
right? Kids in Whitman go to Whitman schools up until high school, kids in Hanson go to Hanson schools up until high school. I think we all recognize we have to have a vehicle to make exceptions to that rule, because it doesn't make sense necessarily to have two preschool programs or.
Right, we're doing that now.
Right, we are.
Or two specialized learnings
If you have
programs.
specialized education with some of it, it works into the SPED program to where it might
Right.
affect it where you have to have that going on.
Yeah, I guess, let me just ask you a question or maybe let me ask Ruth. If we offer the program, do we have to house that kid here? So in the case of an ODP, right, if we offer it here, do we have to house that kid here, or do we have to eliminate the program to be able to send them outside the district? Or make a determination that our program doesn't meet their needs, right?
It's on.
So I guess I don't think that's, my personal opinion is that those situations aren't
Right.
covered under that language. I think what we're truly talking about here is exceptions to the Whitman kids go to Whitman, Hanson kids go to Hanson until they get to high school,
general,
right?
that's what
In general.
Right, but it'll cover all of it
There are exceptions.
if you have the superintendent of schools and the committee
Full committee
voting.
voting on it.
It
Yeah.
covers it all. I think.
So this the end of the next paragraph, you'll see is another old issue. In addition, if a school described in subsection 3B should become unusable because of damage or other cause, the committee may vote to use the school in the other town on a temporary emergency basis until facilities become available in the town of residence of the pupils. And we are recommending you eliminate this last paragraph. Those of us who've been school administrators especially, I guess. Parents desiring special placement in a school other than the town of residence may request approval from the superintendent and the school committee. Obviously, any parent can come to the superintendent and the school committee and ask for an exception to something. But putting it in here kind of generates interest in people saying, I'd like to have my Hanson child go to Whitman. I like the teacher over there better. And I don't think you ought to encourage that.
No, it wouldn't be.
That's my opinion.
But they are better in Whitman.
Oh, wait. No, we got the other one.
Well, so just one question, right, there's no, so in the event a school burns down, there's no time frame here about
Temporary.
how long, right? It says temporary, but town decides not to rebuild a school, and now it's 10 years, right? How do you handle that?
Well, that town will still be paying their assessment based on the number of kids they have, wherever they are.
Right. Not what school they're in, it's the
But the
assessment.
town, the individual towns, now we get into capital costs, right? The individual towns are responsible for the capital costs of their buildings. So if you're living in Whitman and you got Hanson schools at the, Hanson kids in the Whitman Middle School and you need to replace that roof.
And half of the kids are Hanson, half of the
Right,
kids are
yeah.
Whitman. I see where you're going.
I'm just throwing it out there.
No,
Not
I see
that
where you're
it's
going.
going to happen, but it leaves us in a tough situation if things aren't moving fast enough.
If a building were to, God forbid, burn down, it would be insured. So the funds would be there to rebuild.
It'd also be there to temporarily house if you had to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
portables and whatnot.
So this, I think, would be on a basis of common sense, the fact of,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
I'm asking the question.
We're
That's all.
all questions are great, I think.
And I would
Plugs holes,
think
Chris.
that the first line of defense within a town would be, obviously, you'd be looking at double sessions.
Yeah.
So would be to put one of their existing school structures into the double sessions instead of the opposite town, I would think.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what we have school committee members that do.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
B, lease of the present schools. And again, we've talking about the leases at some point later, not focusing on those tonight, but at least just the language that's in here. Town of Whitman and the Town of Hanson are each hereby authorized to lease to the regional school district buildings, facilities, grounds, equipment, and educational materials presently used by the member towns for school purposes as hereinafter listed. Each lease shall be for a term of 20 years, and the term shall commence on the date when the committee assumes jurisdiction over the pupils in all grades of the district. So there are two issues there. Crossed out presently used by the member towns because your elementary schools have changed over time. So it's not just those that are presently used, it's leasing of any of the schools that would be in either of your towns to the district. So that makes sense. And then again, the last part, deleting that because the school committee has already assumed jurisdiction over all grades, so it's just redundant.
Wasn't it a 50-year lease and didn't it have to get approved through the House of Representatives and the Senate and signed by the governor?
This
This says 20, but I could have sworn it was a 50-year.
is the original document, so.
That was the initial?
The law states that 20 years is the maximum. Now,
Right, but we got a waiver.
There have been places that gotten waivers, maybe you're one of them, to do it longer than that.
We were, I just don't know where we stand right now on that.
It was done, they had to be fixed when the law changed.
But the law does not allow more than 20 years unless you get this.
I know we got that waiver. Positive.
This would be going forward for any additional leases that we put in place, I assume, right? So anything that's already done is done, and.
Right.
Or if a term came due, I guess.
Right. And if the state decided to change the term to 10 years, it doesn't matter what the agreement says, we'd only be able to do it for 10
We're
without
already
going to the
there.
State House anyway, so.
Unless you get that waiver.
Well, that's what, yeah, unless you.
Would you like me to read the next paragraph where no changes there? I'm happy to if you think.
No, you're good.
Okay. The leases may contain provisions for extension in accordance with the provisions under MGL Section 14C of Chapter 71, as amended. The town of Whitman and the town of Hanson shall receive no rental for the leases. The leases shall contain provisions authorizing the district to repair and make minor improvements or alterations to the buildings or any part thereof. The district shall pay all expenses of maintaining and operating the buildings and keeping them in good repair during the terms of the leases. The committee shall also be authorized to make major improvements, alterations, additions, or capital expenditures to town-owned schools, but only after notification of the appropriate member town's Board of Selectmen and after approval at a town meeting of that member town. Capital improvements for elementary buildings in either town must be approved by the voters of said town. Capital improvements will be submitted to the selectmen in the form of an article. Approved articles will not be a part of the regional school budget. Nothing contained in the leases shall prevent the committee from permitting the use of the buildings or premises by the town of Whitman or the town of Hanson. Going on, each lease involving a member town shall be on such other terms as may be determined by the selectmen thereof and the committee, who shall execute the lease for the, probably should be the member town, and the regional school district respectively. The regional school district shall insure at its expense the buildings so leased. Details of such insurance shall be determined by the committee after consultation with selectmen of the town owning the buildings. Now, here's the next question. Do you want the names of your schools listed? As we've talked about, they're changing. They have changed since this was written in '92, and apparently one is changing even as we speak. So that's up to you. We can list the ones that are currently in use or not.
What's the advantage or disadvantage, Mac, to putting the school buildings, we know what they are, other than this document is so out of date? I mean, it lists Frankie Holt's been gone.
Cawthell Building.
Park Ave's been gone. Cawthell Building's been gone. Cawthell Building used to be an administrative building.
Still
Park
there.
Ave's gone. I mean, is it assumed that all schools in the district that we use,
Right.
we know of?
That's kind of the way it starts. That the towns are hereby authorized to lease to the regional school district the buildings, facilities, equipment, and educational materials. And each lease shall be for 20 years. So you have individual leases that can control those situations. So.
I don't think you list them.
I don't know, it might make sense that you name the name of the school and what town they're in, so it spells out.
Why?
Huh?
Why?
So Hanson's not paying for Whitman schools, and Whitman's not paying for Hanson schools. It
Yeah.
spells it out, which is,
That's already taken care of.
Controlled by the lease.
Agreement.
yeah. at least,
Not the
yeah.
regional agreement, right? So I think you're better off.
Yeah, it's independently controlled by a lease.
Yeah,
The lease is going to spell out the name, and that way you don't have to change the whole document.
Because things change. Names of buildings
Does-
change.
Yeah.
Does the lease contain some sort of differentiation between a capital improvement and a minor repair or improvement?
Steve has read the leases more. Your leases, as we've said, are the most complicated leases we've ever seen. They're about 10 or 12 pages long. But
I don't think they do, no. I mean, if
At
they,
some point, do we know, yes, we do need, please, to be able to differentiate, at what point does a improvement become a capital improvement?
You need a dollar amount.
Yeah. Or a definition of
Or a
capital
longevity
improvement,
amount of the repair.
years of use, or,
That's what you,
That
the
kind of-
lifespan of the.
yeah, lifespan of the improvement,
Right.
a
when we
floor
get to
number.
talking about
apportionment,
apportionment and debt, I think we'll address that in the regional agreement. We're not going to deal with that tonight, but there's another section of this
Yeah.
agreement that will talk about when something is called capital. There's a definition of capital already in the agreement.
Okay.
So question we have over here is, it says capital improvements for elementary buildings. It doesn't specify
Middle.
any of the other buildings. And I remember seeing that in
middle
the old
schools.
agreement,
Yeah.
and wondering why that is.
improvement of, for, why don't you say for buildings? Or for, whatever.
who are you talking about?
No, it's
Third
because,
line down, page 6 at the top.
because the capital improvements for elementary schools, according to this, only have to be approved by that one town. Anything for the high school has to be approved.
What
by-
about
How about
the
middle schools?
Are you calling middle schools elementary? That's what we're saying.
The
Oh,
original document had it go K to 8 for elementary, but I think we probably ought to just say
Okay.
elementary and middle schools,
buildings,
Can
yeah.
we say
just for
pre-K to 8?
clarity.
Can we just say
You
pre-K
could
to
say
8?
K to 8, yep.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Well,
Pre-K
it is.
But you know, then if we change
The changes-
configurations, that could be a problem. I'd probably say elementary and middle school buildings.
Because suppose we move the 8th grade to the high school at one point. I'm not
Right.
saying,
Yeah,
ladies
yeah,
and
right,
gentlemen
yeah.
that are watching, I'm not
But you
saying.
never know with enrollment shifts what might
Right,
happen.
exactly, it
So I
could.
think
A lot
of
you'd
towns are
probably
doing
say
that.
I think it's
elementary.
very wise to keep the word buildings in there, because technically you have a 5th grade, which is an elementary grade, in Hanson Middle next year,
Right,
so.
so I would just say elementary and middle
Buildings.
school buildings.
Buildings.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. As you see in yellow, we made a note there saying that we'll talk about the capital and debt process at another time. That's one of the fun conversations. Each lease involving a member town shall be on such other terms as may be determined by the selectmen thereof and the committee who shall execute. Did I read that already? Sorry. What?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. So, yeah, we got down to the schools, and did we agree?
We don't
Are
need-
including the schools, or no?
No.
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 All right. All right.
Yeah.
And C, termination of leases. In the event of the withdrawal of a member town from the district, the leases mentioned in subsection 3B shall be terminated at the time of such withdrawal. Okay. So, with the changes noted,
And we did find a document for 1998 that lists the 50-year lease.
we did.
So there was a
But
revision.
that was
of
never approved.
It was never approved. Didn't that go through the State House, though?
No,
I thought that
No.
was.
I don't
One of the
think so.
reasons we're doing this.
Things were only approved in one town and not the other. So the changes that happened then were unilateral, and they never went to the state.
At least that we could find anyway.
Well, the state has no record of it at all.
They don't?
That's why we're doing this, Jim.
Okay.
No, their
That's
last
why
record
we're
is,
doing
their
this.
last record is this document.
We reviewed the document back into the
You
early 90s.
probably voted
and
it,
said-
but it never went anywhere.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking
looked
about in the
for
state,
everything.
in the State House.
Yeah,
It was
I don't know.
approved.
Well, I'm just
They,
thinking
the
about
document they have is the
our
night.
process. I'm wondering if, instead of voting tonight on what you all think we're changing, we should get a consensus, hopefully, and then we bring it back and have you look at the.
That's
actual-
I
fine.
think that makes
Yeah,
very,
that's what I was
very good
talking
sense.
about, yeah.
That's fine.
And then, yeah, so just make sure that we understand
Yeah.
what the consensus is, and we'll try to
That's okay.
go with that. All right, thank you. So we're going to skip section 4 on apportionment and payment of costs, because we're going to deal with that at a later time.
Just, sorry, going back to C, should it be at the effective date of such withdrawal?
Where are you?
Going back to the termination of leases,
At the,
right? It should be upon the effective date of the withdrawal, right? Because the town's gonna decide to withdraw, if they ever did. There'll be a period there, the leases need to remain in effect until the effective date of the
At least,
withdrawal,
right, school ending or something. At the end of that
It's the
year's
effective
school.
date, right? It
Yeah.
won't be the legal.
yeah, got it. Okay, section 5, transportation. A couple of questions for you here.
Wait a minute, let me get
School
to,
transportation shall be provided by the regional school district. Now, we have pulled from other documents that we have something more specific about how this is calculated. Your current agreement just talks about it. You'll see the first line under the blue crossed out, it says, "And the cost thereof shall be apportioned to the member towns as an operating cost." So,
Section 5.
Page 9, the bottom,
Bottom of
page 10, 9 and,
and the top of page
Bottom of
10.
9.
Skipping over the
bypass
debt process.
I was waiting for her to tell me where it was.
okay, so what we've inserted, the cost of pupil transportation shall be determined by dividing the total cost of transportation minus the estimated Chapter 71 transportation reimbursement by the ratio of each member town's enrollment as of October 1 to the sum of the member town's enrollments as of October 1 of the immediately preceding year in which the costs are to be assessed. So it's basically just saying you take the total cost, subtract what you're going to get for reimbursement, and divide that based on the enrollment.
You forgot subject to appropriation.
Which is basically what you're doing now, I would assume. Is that right, Christine?
No, what we do is, it's based on the students beyond 1.5 miles, whether it's mandated or non-mandated.
Okay, well, that's, yeah.
So overall, the transportation is reduced of the operating cost, but then they get an additional cost based on versus mandated versus non-mandated busing.
Right, okay, so of the mandated, that's what you're doing. You're using the reimbursement and offsetting them.
Like, does Hanson
Yes.
have a
Okay.
separate line item for
I
non-mandated?
read this to you last time. This is the thing that I still think is backwards. It says, "The regional school committee shall determine on an annual basis whether or not non-mandated busing will be paid for by the regional school district." That's reasonable. "If the regional committee decides not to provide non-mandated busing, an article will be present to the selectman's office of each town for approval by the voters." Again, I think that doesn't make sense.
Okay.
That you wouldn't ask the towns to vote on, if you don't provide non-mandated busing, you would ask them to approve if there was, you were giving non-mandated busing.
You're asking them to pay for it
No.
outside of the regional school district budget. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, they'll send us an amount of money that it's gonna cost for non-mandated busing. And it's in a line item in our town warrant, and I think Hanson's the same way, right?
That's right.
And we vote on that line item budget. Say it's $150,000, we'll say. Then the money is transferred to the school department, and they do the busing.
Is that what you want to continue doing?
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we need to rewrite this last sentence, so it says that anything, if the school committee wants to provide non-mandated busing, it'll go to the town for a vote.
Does the
Is that
school
correct?
decide that, or does the town decide that?
For so many years, what it's been is the town just pays it.
Yeah, we just
We're
pay
not
it.
really doing that, we have this annual decision as to whether we're going to give the bill to the towns. We
Yeah.
just give the bill to the town.
I know it.
Right.
Right.
But, I mean,
Though there was serious consideration, I think.
But that would really come from the town.
Right.
Decide whether they want to pay or
Right.
not.
But I guess, right, so the process that happens today is the school committee actually decides to provide the non-mandated busing
Or not to provide it.
to provide it, because they're the ones who enter into the contract, but it's funded through, it's not, right, it's funded outside of the regional school district's budget. It's funded via, by the town.
Right. Or in actuality, the towns decide that they want to provide non-mandated
That's
busing.
more the action.
Is the town entering into a separate contract with the busing company? Or the district?
No, the
No, no,
district
district's
ends up
providing
providing the
mandated
services.
But if
But
they
the
chose
town-
not to pay for it, we would just provide mandated busing.
For instance,
Right, but I guess legally, the district is providing the
Bless you.
non-mandated busing. It's just how it's getting funded, I think is why it didn't make sense to you
I think it's chicken or
from the
the
way it was
egg,
written.
yeah,
basically.
So the bottom
It's
line.
kind
In
of
other words,
like also,
if the school committee decides to provide it, now it's part of our operational budget and it's not separate. And we can't go up and above. And you may have one town decide to do something and another town decide not to. Whitman may say, you know something, we don't want to do non-mandated busing. We have plenty of sidewalks. Hanson
has no
can't do it
sidewalks.
because they don't have sidewalks.
you have that going on now, Fred. Whitman
Right.
has crossing guards, Hanson doesn't.
Yeah,
Whitman
exactly.
pays for the crossing guards
Yeah.
out of a
Right.
separate line
That's a
item,
separate line item.
because they have a different situation where they have sidewalks and they have crossing guards because a bunch of kids walk. Hanson doesn't have that issue because they don't have sidewalks, so there are no crossing guards. So Whitman pays the crossing guard.
Unmandated busing, that's what.
I'm not sure what,
Outside of our budget.
337 thousand.
I would say leave the language exactly the way it is,
Cross 18,
Wait, what?
separate
the
line.
way it was, rather.
it isn't backwards?
Well,
It just looks backwards to me.
I guess that's,
It's to your point.
well, so that's the question, right? We've been doing it this way, but should it require a vote by the committee to offer, right? Every year, should the school committee be voting to offer non-mandated busing to both towns pursuant to funding outside of the regional, right? Should that be a vote that needs to be taken every year? To me is really the question. Are we doing it right today?
Do you want to know why it was taken out of the budget?
Because it's 300,000 in Whitman and 90,000 in Hanson.
No, I
and
know
You're not
that.
gonna split that 60/40.
Right, and if, and I hate to say it, in the old days, if one town or the other will say, Whitman was saying, well, your assessment's crazy, it's too high, we can't afford it, and say, well, then we'll have to take non-mandated busing out. So we said, well, no, we don't want that. Well, that's a decision. So the town says, okay, we'll pay for non-mandated ourselves. It was that simple. You know, and of course, the crossing guards is something that Whitman needs, but Hanson doesn't, so why
Because of the
wouldn't we?
sidewalks.
Right,
Right.
why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
But the whole thing is, if we vote for it in the committee, then I think by law, it's an assessment to the town, and it has to be in our regular operating budget.
I believe you can have exemptions if a member town has a different, the demographics in Whitman and Hanson are much different. And I think that's why these exceptions were made, Fred. Like I said.
Right, I think that's why we're doing it the way we're doing it.
Right.
The town can do it on their own.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
So what are you
They're
saying,
always gonna
Steve?
say no.
My partner here finally
What?
helped me see the light for what this wording means. It just didn't make sense to me, but I.
Oh, did you hit him with
understand.
something?
So now, though, the
What's
question
that big a
is,
deal?
what do we want to do? Do we want to do anything or no?
I would say leave the existing wording the way it was.
Unless we can come up with something better.
Well, it's the school committee's responsibility to offer it, it's the town's responsibility whether or not they want it, is that what we're saying?
Well, I guess that's I guess if you vote not to offer it,
We're putting it all
How
on
does-
the town.
Fred, let me ask you a question. If you vote not to offer it, how does the town provide the non-mandated busing?
We have to go out and do it ourselves.
They turn around, they fund it, they ask us what it would cost to
But
provide
they
the
fund
service
it,
to
they fund
them.
it through who? They fund it through the school.
They-
You're
no, they
still
fund it-
providing the non-mandated busing.
They fund it through their regular budget, through Article 2.
Right.
As a
And under
separate
whose
line item.
contract do they go out to the bus company with to get those buses?
They pay Whitman-Hanson Regional School.
They pay
The
us.
same as
So
they
you're
used to.
still providing the busing.
No, the same as they used to pay us for technical support. They used to pay us to do their IT.
You would bill us, yeah.
It's non-mandated because we do not have to
Right.
offer the busing.
Right.
But you're offering it, right? I guess is my point, right?
Right.
Those students when those students are on that bus, are they covered by the town's insurance, or are they covered by the school insurance? Are they
Covered by the bus company's insurance.
through the contract that the
That we
school
have.
committee has negotiated? See my point, right? The school is still offering non-mandated, and that's why I'm questioning whether we should, when we vote that, when that's voted every year, whether that should be something that's called out by the school committee to say, we're offering non-mandated busing pursuant to funding
Funding by the
outside of the
town.
region. Right,
Oh, yeah, well, that's the way it is now.
but it's not a separate vote today.
That's not,
It's not a
you're
separate.
not really offering if you're not paying.
Right.
Right.
Offering it, but, right.
Subject to appropriations
Right.
by the
Decide if they
towns.
want to offer it,
Yeah, that's-
Right.
and then the towns can decide if they want to pay for it.
Right.
That's kind of what's going on now.
But
Right.
it's the same as when we were doing IT. It's a contract service that the school provides for the town. You know, we
How
used
is
to.
that reflected in your school committee budget?
It's not.
It's not.
That's a different story.
Oh, okay.
So you really want to change the words provide and paid, and then I think it works.
Right.
I agree.
Shall determine on annual
Totally, I
basis
agree with
whether it
you.
will be provided, and then it's, the second part will be, the region decides not to pay, then they pay. So you want
Right.
to switch the words.
I think you just want to switch the words to say provide on,
Provide and then
pursuant to funding outside
the operating budget.
the operating budget, right?
And who presents the article to the selectman's office, which it says, the school committee votes not to do it, but then they ask the selectmen to
Right,
pay for
and they
it?
vote it separately every year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a line item.
So the school committee is, I guess this is where we're getting, the school committee is technically voting to provide it, subject to outside appropriation, right?
Right, it's exactly what it
Well,
is.
I think that
Exactly.
would be
think
much more clear if you said something like that.
That's what it should say, yep.
That's fine.
Right, because that way you guys do all the arranging.
Provided it's kind of over at that point.
Right, it's over, the town doesn't have, so.
Now the town may have to get that.
So next year, if Hanson's saying, we don't have $90,000, and Whitman's saying, we don't have 300 to meet the requirement, and the selectmen are saying, well, you know, we don't want to get rid of non-mandated busing, the school committee could technically say, we're not providing non-mandated busing, now you have the money, right? I mean, to your point, that's
Now, who has the money?
the town. We're talking about the assessment.
Yeah.
I think the language that
I mean, I think, yeah, if you
you
just
guys
say,
talk about makes sense.
you know, pursuant to
Town funding.
outside appropriation or, yeah. Funding, right? Which is how we're doing it
School
today.
committee's ultimately going to leave.
How about just say that the school committee on an annual basis will
So I'll assess the
notify,
town,
will notify the towns of the cost for non-mandated busing for the towns to include in their town meeting, you know, to appropriate funding for such. You know, because we're always going to want to see non-mandated busing be on the table for kids,
But definitely.
okay? And we're always going to be asking the towns to pay for it. So why not just say that we'll notify them on an annual basis what the cost is?
That's what we do now.
I know, but in other words,
But
just
put it in here.
put in
broken.
the agreement
If
so
it's
it
not
just says
broken,
that,
don't fix
period.
it.
There's no circumstances in which the school committee would support it, though, right?
I don't see being able to.
Yeah.
And that was the sort of the
Yeah,
decision
okay.
made in the past.
$500,000.
All right, well, we'll drop some.
You could just say non-mandated busing will be provided pursuant to outside, you know, appropriation,
Appropriation by each member town.
Yeah.
right?
Shorter the better.
Can we get it down to 3 words?
3 words.
All right, thank you. I'll be able to sleep tonight, now I understand that.
So much better.
It's really, it's hard for some people to understand. That's one of the things people look at and say, what?
Yeah.
Okay,
Because legally, we don't have to provide that transportation.
Yeah, when I was a
Legally,
kid, I had
the
to buy
town
bus
could choose
tickets.
to actually-
What's that?
When I was a kid, I had to buy bus
That's
tickets.
right.
In Newton, yeah.
In Newton, yeah.
and you don't get
know what
reimbursement.
No, it's because non-mandated.
Okay.
Right.
Basically, they're saying kids can walk to school, but we're saying, no, they can't because of Route 18 in Whitman.
Right.
We don't want them crossing Route 18. We got crossing guards, but we try to bus as many as we can.
So amendments, section 6, we haven't, how are we doing for time here?
Well, I have one
9
question.
minutes.
I have one question on the busing, just
Yes.
change it. If enrollment, on ridership on non-mandated busing, do you look at that on a yearly basis?
Yes.
And, right, and say, well, we had 200 kids riding the non-mandated, we only have 150, we need 2 buses less. It's adjusted, so you
It's
look
done
at that.
every single year.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
That's how
Katie, we-
that's how the transportation non-mandated assessment is
Yeah,
created.
assessment,
Just for what you're
yeah.
talking about, exactly.
We had a program that we plugged into that, and
Yeah.
it helped skewer that, but before you start on section 6 and get in the middle of it, we're almost at a time period to where we should stop.
We've been,
There's no changes to section 6, right?
right.
Oh, that's good.
Why
No
don't we?
amendments to section 6 on amendments.
6 is good.
All right, how about if we can start, well, we'll start next time looking at all our interpretation of what you have done tonight, and you can vote on each section. And if you'd like me to read section 6 next time, we can, or we can say it's no change to the, no changes. So, would you like to end it there? Okay?
Makes sense?
Okay, we'll end it at section 6, start up with, at the next meeting, re-reviewing all of the changes that we've made to the first 6. And we'll make sure that we're all on the same page with that, and then we'll start out with section 7. Everybody in agreement with that?
Okay.
Thanks, we made some good progress tonight, thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
I'd entertain that. Second, everybody hear that? Motion to adjourn. I didn't hear who the second was. Second.
I jumped on that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Maybe just announce when our next meeting is.
Our next meeting is going to be on December 4th, 2017, at 6 PM here in the Whitman-Hanson Library.
Something about
All are encouraged to attend, as this is a very important agreement that we're making amendments to. And I've had a motion to adjourn and a second and a vote, so thank you all this evening for coming. We'll see you on the 4th of December, 6 o'clock.